Alfred had booked very grand staterooms for them on the Titanic, side by side, and there were rooms in steerage for Bridget, Victoria's maid, and Robert, his valet, whom they were taking with them. The White Star Line sent them a list of passengers, and Alfred was very pleased to see that he knew a number of them, Jacob Astor and his wife among them. There were a few he wanted to avoid, and some he would enjoy chatting with, and one he hadn't seen for far too long, and was eager to smoke a good cigar with while they caught up. Bert Banning lived in the north, and Alfred hadn't seen him in several years. Because he didn't go to their club as frequently as in previous years, Alfred didn't run into people as he used to. He had always enjoyed going to his club, and Victoria encouraged him to go when he felt better. But he was delighted at the prospect of meeting friends on the ship, and even new people, and he loved the idea that Victoria could enjoy the company of some young people her own age, although most well-born women of her age were already married by then. He hoped she might meet some young couples who would introduce her to men the right age for her. He wanted her to meet suitable men now. He didn't know how many more years he had, and he didn't want to leave her alone in the world, since they had no living relatives except each other. Alfred and Victoria boarded the ship on April 10th in Southampton, having taken the boat train from Waterloo Station in London. They were in a first-class carriage, and their maid and valet were in a separate car for third-class passengers. The train ride took 2 hours. Their trunks had been sent ahead, taken by their servants, and delivered to their cabins, where several stewards and maids had unpacked them so everything was ready for them when they arrived on board. Alfred was invigorated by the sight of the ship and excited to be there, and Victoria made sure that he was wearing a warm scarf and his warmest coat, and stood out of the wind when they were leaning on the rail, observing the activity on the dock. The dock had been specially built the year before to accommodate the Titanic's deep keel. They watched the gangplanks being removed and stowed, and it was breathtaking as they left the dock. The ship's architect and the head of the White Star Line were on board for the maiden voyage. Alfred and Victoria had both found letters from the captain in their staterooms, inviting them to dinner on the first night. There was a list of the ship's varied entertainments, at what time tea was served in first class in the afternoon, at what time the dining room opened, and where the different bands played at night, with space for the first-class passengers to dance. Second class was several decks below them, and boarded further down the dock from the first-class passengers, and steerage had cabins shared by a number of people, many of them servants of the people travelling in first class. There were roughly 2,200 passengers and crew on board, approximately 325 in first class, 285 in second class, and 710 in third class, with a crew of 900. The crew was impeccably trained, and the ship was a marvel of modern machinery, exquisite taste, and magnificent decor. Victoria and Alfred had travelled to New York on the RMS Cedric the year before, the largest passenger ship afloat at the time, and the Titanic was infinitely more beautiful. Victoria and Alfred stood at the rail until they were well out of the harbour and headed toward the sea. Alfred had begun to feel the chill air by then and went to his stateroom to warm up. It was palatial in size, and Victoria's was almost as large. She stayed on the deck longer and watched young couples stroll by. She had worn a fur coat and a beautiful new hat, and several men glanced admiringly at her as they walked past, with their wives' hands tucked into their arms. At last she went to check on her father, and found him dozing in a chair in his stateroom, and she went to take off her hat and coat, and change out of her travelling dress of heavy black wool with a high neck and skirt to her ankles. She looked very fashionable and striking in a full-length sable coat.